Hey, what's up guys? Brian Kelly here from Zombie Guitar. Here in this video I want to give you an 8-week structured course that essentially is going to teach you the roadmap to cover the entire fretboard so that you can solo in any key over any chord progression and basically just step into a live situation where, the band could say, okay, now solo, and you could just play across the whole fretboard and know what you're doing. So if you follow this 8-week course, how I lay it out, I truly do believe that you can do that. Is it for the absolute beginner? No. But if you've been playing for a while and you have, the finger coordination and you know some basic chords and stuff like that, and you know a little bit about soloing, but you're intimidated by all the different theory that's out there, if you're there in your journey, I think this course will be for you. So I'm just going to lay it out week by week, exactly what you should practice for each week. I suggest maybe giving it like an hour a day. So if you practice an hour a day for 8 weeks, that's 2 months. I think you're going to come a long way. So this is the roadmap that you see in Eric Clapton solos. You see it in Jimi Hendrix solos. You see it in Dave Gilmour solos, all kinds of classic rock solos. Pretty much every guitar player eventually figures out this roadmap at some point in their guitar playing journey. I'm not saying you have to stick to it 100%, but you should know the backbone of most guitar solos, and I'm going to be giving examples along the way. So let's jump right into it. Okay, so week 1, the goal is to learn how to figure out the key of any song or chord progression instantaneously by ear. And you do this by what I call the pentatonic method. So I don't want you thinking in terms of this is a major key or this is a minor key. Just think in terms of there's 12 possible key signatures. So most songs are written in just a key, unless you're playing, some kind of jazz, which is beyond the scope of this video. But most songs that you hear on the radio, most classic rock tunes, most rock songs, they're just in a key. So you have to figure out the key. And there's a 1 in 12 chance that you're going to get the right key. And you do so by selecting the pentatonic scale that fits perfectly over the music that you're trying to figure out. So this is the pentatonic scale pattern right here. So you can play that down here using open strings, the open position. You could play it starting on the 1st fret in between the 1st and the 4th fret, 2nd and 5th fret. So you can keep going and trying them out. Eventually you're going to get to the 12th fret up here, and that's when everything repeats itself. So the 12th fret is the same thing as playing down here. It's just the next octave. So somewhere in between open and 12th fret, you're going to find one pentatonic box that fits perfectly over the progression that you're attempting to solo over. Once you do that, that's how you figure out your key. So let me just give you a quick example of me trying to find the correct pentatonic box over my sample progression, and then I'll talk about exactly what I did there. So as you saw, I tried out different pentatonic boxes, and then I eventually came to the conclusion that the one between the 3rd and the 6th fret right here was the one that locked into the music. So I chose a specific chord progression to make it so it's not obvious, because the chord progression didn't start out with a chord that's on the 3rd fret. The chord progression was actually this. So it was an E flat major chord to a B flat major chord to an F major chord to a G minor chord. And I tried various different pentatonic patterns, and I eventually came to find that this is the one that worked. So I didn't really need to try any other ones because I already found my key here. So, which right there is also the exact same thing as up here on the 15th fret, because if 12th fret is where everything repeats itself, open, 1, 2, 3. So this is my one pentatonic pattern here. Both of them are the same thing, just an octave apart from each other. So what does that tell me? So when I find my pentatonic box, that tells me that the minor name for that key is dictated by the note on the low E string that falls underneath my index. So that would be the key of G minor. Or the major name for this key would be the name of the note that falls underneath my pinky. So here's B flat. This is the note B flat. So this is either the key of B flat major or G minor. It's the same thing. G minor, B flat major, it's a relative major minor pair. They share the same chords as each other. They share all the same notes as each other. There's no sense in thinking in terms of major keys or minor keys. Just think in terms of, okay, one of the 12 possible key signatures. I found my one of the 12 possible key signatures. This is my reference position for that. Up here is also my other reference position for that. The key is G minor, B flat major, same thing. So the goal for week 1 is figure out how to find the pentatonic box that works over various different chord progressions. Listen to songs on the radio, listen to backing tracks on YouTube, whatever you got to do, just practice figuring out the key by ear. Find the pentatonic box that works, and that's week 1. Week 2, we're going to be adding the lower extension and the upper extension to this pentatonic box. So the purpose of this is so you can start expanding your playing range, and you can also start doing diagonal runs. So you can add the upper and lower extension to this pentatonic box down here, and you can do the exact same thing up here because everything is just the same after the 12th fret. So rather than trying to remember pentatonic position number 1 all the way across 6 strings, and then pentatonic position number 2 all the way across 6 strings, and then this pentatonic position in this direction all the way across 6 strings, we're just going to add a couple extra notes. So here's the pentatonic box. So the lower extension just adds these 2 notes right here. That's it. That's the lower extension. So you can now do stuff like this. So a little bit of diagonal movement there. All right, so that's the lower extension. The upper extension is just these notes right here. So again, you can be starting the lower extension, and then you can slide up to here. So just by adding in that lower extension and the upper extension, which is just a little piece of the neighboring pentatonic positions, not the full pentatonic positions, we're just adding little pieces here. This allows you to expand your playing range now that much of the fretboard. But not only that much of the fretboard is covered, you can also do the same thing up here. So where are we at? So like that much. So you have a big chunk of the fretboard that you can play down here and a big chunk of the fretboard that you can play up here. And that's essentially the roadmap right there. That's like the shell. So just doing that alone is going to get you covering most of the fretboard. So if you can find the key, like I said, to do in week 1, and you can then add in this simple lower and upper extension, you can now solo that much of the guitar and then that much of the guitar. All right, so in week 3, we're going to be looking at bends. So we're still working in the same framework, the same soloing framework. You have your pentatonic position number 1, you have your lower extension, you have your upper extension, giving you a nice chunk of the fretboard to solo in, down here and up here. Now we're just focusing on commonly bent notes. So the first 4 notes to kind of focus on would be the note that lands on the G string here, the note that lands on the B string here, high E string, and high E string up here. So any of those 4 notes that you see circled in red, you bend those by 1 whole step, which is 2 frets. So you bend those by 1 whole step, and that's just going to be bending to the next note of the pentatonic scale. So those are the 4 most commonly bent notes. You then have this note right here, which is on the B string, and that you can either bend a full step or you can bend 1.5 steps. So you hear that in a lot of these solos. So that note right there, bend that 1.5 steps. That's going to take you to a note that's in key. If you only bend it 1 whole step, it's still going to be taking you to a note that's in key. So either one will work for you in that situation. So that note, either a whole step or 1.5 steps. Then you have this note right here. So that's on the B string too, and I like to do that a lot. That's like a melodic half step bend. So bending from here. So just a half step bend there. I like doing that one a lot. But the whole point is use your ear, figure these things out by practicing. If you spend an hour a day on week 3 practicing soloing in this framework, practicing specific bends, it's really not a lot to take in. So you have the red colored notes that you bend a full step. Then you have this note right here, which I circled in blue. That's 1.5 steps or just 1 full step. And then you have this note, which I circled in green. That's a half step bend. So play around with those bends, down here, up there. Check out this little demo. Then we'll move on to week 4. All right, so in week 4, I just want you to practice adding in the blue note to this framework. So we still have our pentatonic position number 1. You have your lower extension, you have your upper extension, so you have all this fretboard area to cover in a diagonal type of fashion. Same thing for up here. So the blue note, we're just going to add it into 2 different spots. It's the same note, it's just found in 2 different spots. So one is going to be on the A string and one is going to be on the G string. Same note, it's colored blue because it's the blue note. The thing to understand about the blue note is it's not technically part of the key, or it's not part of the key at all. Every black dot that you see on the screen is part of the key. It's part of the pentatonic scale. In week 5, we're going to add in a couple additional notes even then. Those are also going to be part of the key, but the blue note is not part of the key. Therefore, you don't really want to sustain on it. So you kind of just want to use it as a passing tone. So maybe do things like this. So whatever, I was just kind of noodling around there, but I was just not sustaining on the blue note at any point. Any notes that I was holding out were notes where the black dots were the in-key notes. The blue note was just kind of used as like a quick hammer-on note or a hammer-pull note, or just a quick 1, 2, 3, moving from one in-key note to the next. So the goal of week 4 is to just practice utilizing the blue note into your playing for whatever key you're playing in, and just work it into this framework. So do that in the lower register, do that in the upper register. Check out this quick little demo, and that's week 4. All right, so in week 5, we're going to be adding in 3 additional notes, and those are going to create what is known the diatonic scale. So because we're not calling this a major key and we're not calling this a minor key, because major keys and minor keys are essentially the same thing, there's just the major perspective and there's the minor perspective. We're just adding in 3 additional notes, and I'm going to show you exactly how you can call it the minor scale if you want, or you can call it the major scale if you want. So the 3 additional notes, one is going to be found on the G string, one will be found on the B string, and one will be found on the high E string. So if you start on the white dot right here and you play through this scale pattern until you get to the next white dot, which is up here, you're essentially just playing the natural minor scale. So that sounds like this. So that's your natural minor scale. If you instead start on the red dot and you play through the scale pattern until you arrive at the next red dot, you're playing the major scale. So that's this. All right, so because we already found our key in week 1, this is the key of G minor, or this is the key of B flat major. It's the same thing. It's the relative major minor pair for the key we're working in. This is my G natural minor scale, G minor scale, or my B flat major scale. It's all the same thing. So we're just adding in these extra diatonic notes on the high E string, the B string, and the G string. Sure, you could add in extra diatonic notes here, here, here. You could add in extra diatonic notes until you cover the entire fretboard. But we're cutting through all of that stuff and we're just sticking to this roadmap. So by sticking to this roadmap, you have your pentatonic position number 1, you have your lower extension, you have your upper extension, and now you have these extra diatonic notes that are just found in the 3 different locations that I pointed out to you. So when you're playing over these different chord progressions, pentatonic is always going to sound good, but sometimes you're just missing that one note, and that's what these diatonic notes are. So that one perfect note that you may be looking for, that's what these are for, right? So practice playing down here, practice playing up here, check out this little demo, then we'll move on to week 6. All right, so week 6 is going to be about targeting chord tones by ear. So I have a ton of other lessons about chord tone targeting. If you've been following my videos for any length of time, you know that I have beaten this concept into the ground. But we're trying to keep things simple here. So the method that I'm suggesting to practice here is just what I call the on-off method. So we've already determined that our key is G minor if you're looking at this from the minor perspective, or B flat major if you're looking at this from the major perspective. And we have our framework of notes. We have our pentatonic position number 1. We have our lower extension. We have our upper extension. And then we went and we added in those additional diatonic notes in the week 5 stuff. So a key scale is only 7 notes. So even though, we're spanning 6 strings and we're spanning more of the fretboard, it's only 7 notes. So the scale, the key scale that we're playing is 7 notes. Any of the chords that we're soloing over, there's the E flat major chord, the B flat major chord, the F major chord, the G minor chord. All of those chords are part of this key. Any of those chords contain 3 notes. And those 3 notes are all part of the scale. That's why everything's in key. The notes that make up the chords are part of the key scale. The notes that make up the scale are part of the key scale. It's all part of the 7 notes. So when you're trying to target chord tones, since a chord has 3 notes in it, you have a 3/7 shot of getting it right. It's not exactly 50-50, but it's almost 50-50. So if you're soloing and you're listening and you're trying to target chord tones and you're sustaining on a note that's not quite what you're looking for, usually the perfect note that you're looking for is just 1 scale note away. So if I'm soloing here, and that's not the right note, this will probably be the right note. Or if I'm doing this, and that's not the right note, that's probably the right note. I'm usually only one scale note away, and it doesn't only have to be a half step difference. So if I'm here, that may not be the note I'm looking for, but this one may be the note I'm looking for. So it's all part of this framework. Upper extension, then we have our pentatonic position number 1. Then you have your extra diatonic notes, your lower extension. So we're just still working in the same framework of notes, but because we have these diatonic notes here on these higher 3 strings, we have the full 7 notes from which to work with. And by doing this on-off method, if you're not perfectly on the chord tone, that's exactly what you're looking for. Try sliding to the next scale note, either up or try sliding down. And that's all there is to it. So work on doing this by ear, whatever key you're working in. Just practice doing this by ear. And you may not always want to land on a chord tone. You don't always have to, but just try and develop your ear to hear, okay, yes, that's a chord tone, or no, that's not a chord tone. If it's not a chord tone, you're usually on one scale note away. So check out this demo where I try and demonstrate what I'm talking about, and then we'll move on. So in week 7, we're just going to be filling in this large space of the fretboard that we're not using, and we're going to be doing so by adding in another pentatonic position. It's actually pentatonic position number 4. I refer to this as the A string home box, just like I call the pentatonic position number 1. I call that the home box because that's like the ultimate reference position for all of this stuff. Well, the A string home box is like the same thing. You have your roots, you have your minor scale root and your major scale root falling under your index and your pinky, only you have it on the A string. So we have all this soloing area, which is already taken up already with this pentatonic 1 and upper and lower extension stuff. Now this A string home box thing, this pentatonic position 4, it's going to just kind of give you stuff to do right here. So if G is under my index finger and B flat is under my pinky, there's a G up here and there's a B flat up here. All right, so G and B flat. So this is how you find your pentatonic position number 4. So that looks like this. All right, so if you start on the white dot and move to white dot, it's the minor pentatonic. If you start on the red dot and move to the next red dot, it's the major pentatonic. So that's just pentatonic position number 4. So the objective of week 7 is to continue practicing all the stuff that you did in the previous weeks in this whole area here, in this area here, and then try just jumping and adding in this pentatonic position number 4 stuff, ultimately covering the whole fretboard. All right, so this is going to be the final week, and this is going to be where you're getting kind of the most stuff thrown at you at once, but because you've went through and did the previous weeks, none of this stuff should be too overwhelming. So we're just going to be adding in upper and lower extensions to this pentatonic position number 4. We're going to be adding in the blue note, and we're going to be adding in some extra diatonic notes, and we're going to be practicing the bending. All right, so you could just basically take your week 8 and strictly focus on this pentatonic position number 4 area and just add all the extra stuff in. All right, so here's our pentatonic position number 4 shell. And you can come down here, play the notes on the low E string too. So the lower extension is going to be here. So you have this note and this and this. That's your lower extension. And then when you want to add in your upper extension, that is like this. So you have this note, and this note. All right, so that is, adding in your upper and lower extension. You have the blue note found in one spot for this diagram. You can add it right here. You can find the blue note found in other spots, but I'm trying to limit the amounts of blue notes we're adding. So you have your blue note added in pentatonic position number 1 in just 2 spots, and then for this pentatonic position number 4, just 1 spot. So that's your blue note. So you got your lower extension, your upper extension, you got your blue note, and then there's just 2 spots where we're adding in diatonic notes. So right here, and then right here. So you have your lower extension, you have your upper extension, you have your blue note, and then you have your diatonic notes. All right, and then again, practice the bends. Just spend your week 8 practicing this pentatonic position 4 to learn it the best you can. And that's the objective for week 8. All right, so that's it. So I know that seems like it could be a lot if you just watch this straight through as just one video, but if you really listen to what I'm suggesting here and you focus on just 1 week at a time, 1 hour per day, it's really not a lot to take in on a week-to-week basis. So really focus on each week's material. After 8 weeks, you're just going to see the whole fretboard just kind of opens up to you. Now, is this all you're ever going to need to know? No. You're going to eventually want to, play all the positions across all the strings. You're going to want to learn other scales. You're going to want to learn other tricks, arpeggios, and stuff like that. There's all kinds of other stuff. But this is like, as a musician that has played for like 15 years, gigging covers and stuff like that, I've had to improvise a million solos in my life, and at least 80% of the solos pretty much just follow the same roadmap. I figure out what key I'm in. I find my pentatonic position number 1, my home box. I add my upper and lower extensions in. I do some bends. I listen for chord tones. I jump around to pentatonic position 4. I jump up to the higher register of the guitar, back to pentatonic position number 1 again with the upper and lower extensions. That's like 80% of every solo I've ever played, and you hear the same stuff done in all types of other popular solos. Jimi Hendrix solos, Clapton solos, Eagle solos, blues solos. You hear it all the time. I was debating on whether or not to include some actual examples, but I think I'm not going to because I don't want to get the copyright strike from YouTube, because this is mostly just my original stuff that I'm talking about here. So I don't want to go and try and throw in some kind of Jimi Hendrix example solo or some kind of Eagles example solo and get a stupid copyright strike because of that. But I have those lesson videos available on YouTube. So if you want to check those out, look for this roadmap. You're going to see this roadmap found everywhere. This is just like the backbone of guitar. This is something I believe every intermediate guitar player should learn and eventually will figure out for themselves at some point along their guitar journey. All right, so hope you guys found this helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'll see you next time.